Every organism needs energy and nutrients to survive, grow, and reproduce. However, different organisms obtain these resources in very different ways. Over millions of years, natural selection has produced adaptations that allow organisms to exploit particular food sources and environments. These adaptations help define an organism's ecological niche. An ecological niche is the role of a species in an ecosystem. It includes all of the biotic and abiotic factors that influence growth, survival, and reproduction. Abiotic factors include the environmental conditions like temperature, precipitation, light availability, among many others. Biotic factors include the interactions with other organisms, such as predators, prey, competitors, parasites, and mutualistic partners. It also includes how a species obtains food and energy. Let's look at a specific example, a jaguar living in the Amazon rainforest. The jaguar's niche is much more than simply being a large cat. The jaguar depends on warm temperatures, high rainfall, access to fresh water, and forest habitats that provide cover for hunting. It also competes with other predators for food, hunts prey such as capybaras and caimans, and may even carry parasites. They interact with plants that provide shelter and hunting opportunities. As an apex predator, the jaguar stalks and ambushes prey, using its powerful jaws and excellent night vision to capture animals. Together, these abiotic conditions, biotic interactions, and feeding behaviors define the jaguar's ecological niche. Every species has its own unique niche, shaped by its adaptations and the environment in which it lives. One important environmental factor affecting an organism's niche is oxygen availability. The vast majority of multicellular organisms and some unicellular organisms need oxygen for survival. They depend on it for aerobic cellular respiration to generate ATP, and without it, they cannot survive. These organisms that require oxygen for survival are known as obligate aerobes. Humans are a good example. There are many types of organisms that are the opposite of this. In fact, oxygen can actually be toxic to some organisms, typically unicellular organisms like bacteria, and they survive only in environments where oxygen is absent. Organisms that cannot survive with oxygen are called obligate anaerobes. An example is bacteria of the species Clostridium botulinum, which causes botulism and is also used to produce Botox injections. You might find it helpful to remember the difference in this way. Aerobic refers to air or oxygen. Obligate aerobes depend on oxygen. In anaerobic, the prefix an means not or without. Therefore, anaerobic means without air, or more specifically, oxygen. And obligate means must. So obligate aerobes must have oxygen, while obligate anaerobes must be without oxygen. As is often the case, there are always gray areas or exceptions in biology. Facultative anaerobes are organisms that can survive with and without oxygen. Facultative means flexible or optional, so facultative anaerobes are flexible in their use of oxygen, using it when it's available to undergo aerobic respiration, which yields large amounts of ATP. But when oxygen is absent, they can switch to anaerobic pathways. An example of a facultative anaerobe is yeast. These different oxygen requirements allow organisms to occupy different ecological niches and reduce competition for resources. Photosynthesis is the process by which light energy is converted to chemical energy stored in organic molecules. Plants, algae, and many groups of prokaryotes depend on photosynthesis, using sunlight to synthesize glucose from carbon dioxide and water. Because they produce their own organic molecules, they are classified as autotrophs. Auto meaning self, and troph referring to food. So autotroph literally means an organism that makes its own food. Photosynthetic organisms form the foundation of most ecosystems because they make food and provide a critical source of energy for the entire food web. Nearly all heterotrophs ultimately depend on photosynthetic organisms either directly or indirectly. While plants, algae, and many prokaryotes are autotrophs using photosynthesis, all animals are considered heterotrophs, meaning they obtain organic molecules by consuming other organisms. Hetero is a prefix meaning other, and again, troph refers to food. So their food comes from other organisms. The most common form of nutrition in animals is holozoic nutrition. It involves 4 major steps. First, food is ingested. Then it is digested internally. Nutrients are absorbed across a digestive surface. And finally, the nutrients are assimilated into cells and tissues where they are used for growth, repair, and energy production. Different animal species have evolved specialized feeding structures and digestive systems that allow them to exploit different food sources and occupy different niches. There's a large diversity of living organisms, and their modes of nutrition are just as diverse. Protists are an incredibly diverse group of mostly unicellular eukaryotes with a wide variety of nutritional strategies. Some protists photosynthesize, like plants. Others consume organic matter like animals. However, a few can switch between both modes of nutrition depending on environmental conditions, and these organisms are known as mixotrophs. A classic example is euglena, a freshwater protist that can photosynthesize when light is available, but can also absorb or ingest organic matter when light is scarce. Many species of oceanic plankton are also mixotrophic, allowing them to photosynthesize when light and nutrients are available, while also consuming other microorganisms when conditions change. This flexibility helps them thrive in nutrient-poor regions of the ocean and plays an important role in marine food webs and global carbon cycling. Some mixotrophs are obligate, meaning they require both nutritional modes. Others are facultative, meaning they switch between strategies depending on environmental conditions. Mixotrophy provides flexibility and allows organisms to survive in environments where resources change over time. This flexibility can give mixotrophs an advantage over other organisms that rely on only one nutritional strategy. Many fungi and bacteria obtain nutrients through saprotrophic nutrition. Saprotrophs, sometimes referred to as decomposers, feed on dead organic matter such as fallen leaves, animal remains, and waste products like feces or urine. Unlike animals, saprotrophs digest food externally. They secrete enzymes into their environment, breaking down complex molecules into smaller, soluble molecules that can then be absorbed. Animals that use holozoic nutrition refers to internal digestion. Because saprotrophs recycle nutrients back into ecosystems, they are often called decomposers. Without decomposers, nutrients would remain locked in dead organisms, and the waste of organisms and eventually ecosystems would run out of essential materials needed for growth. Archaea are one final group of organisms that also display a lot of diversity in how they obtain energy. Archaea are one of 3 domains of life. Some archaea are autotrophs, while others are heterotrophs. Many inhabit extreme environments such as hot springs, salt lakes, deep-sea hydrothermal vents, and oxygen-poor sediments. Their metabolic pathways are often very different from those found in plants, animals, or bacteria. And this diversity demonstrates that life can evolve many different solutions to the challenge of obtaining energy for ATP production. The wide range of nutritional strategies found in archaea allows them to occupy ecological niches unavailable to most other organisms. As we've seen, organisms are well adapted to their modes of nutrition. Animals and their teeth are no exception. Since most animals are holozoic, they need a proper way of consuming their food. There is a strong relationship between the shape and arrangement of teeth, or dentition, and the diet of omnivorous and herbivorous members of the family Hominidae. Humans, or Homo sapiens, are found in the family Hominidae, as are extinct species of humans. The family also includes great apes like gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans. Dentition provides important clues about an animal's diet. Herbivores often possess broad, flat molars adapted for grinding plant material. Carnivores typically have sharp teeth for tearing flesh, and omnivores possess a combination of both tooth types that allow them to consume both plant and animal foods. By examining fossil skulls and teeth, scientists can infer the likely diet of extinct species. This illustrates an important aspect of science. Observation of living organisms allows scientists to develop theories that can be applied to organisms that no longer exist. Dentition, therefore, provides valuable evidence about ecological niches in both modern and extinct species. Let's compare 3 examples of dentition in the family Hominidae: Homo sapiens, Homo floresiensis, and Paranthropus robustus. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have relatively small jaws and generalized dentition. This means they are well adapted to omnivorous diets, both plant and animal material. The incisors cut food, canines, while relatively small, help bite and tear tougher foods, and premolars and molars have rounded cusps, adapted for crushing and mashing food before swallowing. Homo floresiensis, which lived on the Indonesian islands of Flores until about 50,000 years ago, had teeth very similar to Homo sapiens. Their relatively small molars and reduced canines suggest that they had an omnivorous diet that included plants, small animals, and possibly seafood. In contrast, Paranthropus robustus had massive jaws and exceptionally large premolars and molars with thick enamel. These adaptations allowed it to chew with great force and process tough, fibrous, or hard foods like seeds, roots, and nuts. The small incisors and reduced canines suggest that most chewing was done at the back of the mouth. By comparing the size, shape, and wear patterns of teeth in fossil skulls, scientists can infer the diet and ecological niches of extinct species. Let's explore some additional adaptations of living organisms. Heterotrophs with holozoic nutrition can further be divided into herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. Herbivore refers to an animal that eats only plant matter to obtain chemical energy in the form of carbon compounds. Examples of herbivores include insects, cows, and goats, among many others. Herbivores have specialized ways to take in plant material and be able to break it down. Insects, for example, might have jaw-like mouthparts that are used to cut, tear, crush, and chew their food as seen here. Other insects have tubular mouthparts to feed off fluids that are found inside of the plant. Their mouthpart can be used like a straw to access these. In herbivorous mammals, their front incisors are long and flat and work much like scissors to cut plant material, while the back teeth are specialized for sideways grinding movement and help increase the surface area of the food so digestive enzymes in the saliva can begin to break it down. Because there's so much grinding of the teeth, they get worn down and have constant teeth growth. Now that we've learned about a few adaptations of herbivores, what about the plants they feed on? All of life on Earth is in a constant struggle to survive. The herbivores have evolved ways to better consume and digest their food, and at the same time, plants have evolved ways to avoid herbivory, or being eaten. This is called coevolution, where the adaptations of one species drive the adaptations in another. Plants have physical defenses such as thorns, spines, and tough leaves. They also have chemical defenses. Some plants produce toxic compounds that make tissue less palatable or tasty for animals, or even poisonous. I love to use the example of caffeine. Caffeine is actually toxic to most herbivores. In nature, plants produce it as a natural pesticide and chemical defense mechanism to deter insects and small animals from eating their leaves, seeds, or nectar. Many insects lack the metabolic pathways needed to detoxify caffeine. Another example of a chemical produced by plants are tannins. You might have heard of tannins in reference to red wine. They are a common compound in red wine and give it the effect of drying your mouth and tasting a little bitter. These same effects in other herbivores will actually deter herbivores from consuming the plant and can have secondary effects that make the plant hard to digest. While certain plant chemicals are toxic to herbivores, life is always evolving. Some herbivores have evolved metabolic adaptations that allow them to detoxify these chemicals and continue feeding. Take this caterpillar, for example. Caterpillars have numerous adaptations that allow them to feed efficiently on plants. They have strong mandibles for cutting and chewing tough plant tissue, but then they also have specialized digestive enzymes that help them detoxify chemicals produced by plants that are poisonous to other insects. Not only have herbivores and plants co-evolved, but predators and prey too. Many predators are carnivores, organisms that are usually animals and feed on other animal tissue. Predators rely on catching their prey, killing, and eating it. To do this, they have many adaptations that can be physical, chemical, or behavioral. For example, some predators like the cheetah use speed and agility, sharp claws and teeth to hunt and capture their prey. They also have digestive systems that are capable of breaking down the animal tissues they consume. Typically, their senses are very acute. Eagles can spot prey from as far as 3 kilometers away, and a mole has a highly sensitive system for smelling and identifying their prey. Other adaptations might be chemical in nature. Some predators can release certain chemicals that poison or paralyze their prey. Many snakes use venom to immobilize or kill their prey before consuming it. The venom of a cobra causes paralysis, allowing it to consume prey that might otherwise be too strong or fast. Many spiders inject venom into their prey, which contains neurotoxins that paralyze insects and digestive systems that begin breaking down the internal tissues of their prey. The spider then consumes the liquefied tissues. And lastly, adaptations might be behavioral. Some animals use tools to obtain food. Many dolphin species work together in coordinated groups called pods to capture prey more efficiently. For example, bottlenose dolphins herd schools of fish into tight balls near the surface, making it more difficult for the fish to escape. Individual dolphins then take turns swimming through the concentrated group of fish to feed. Many squirrel species collect and store food during times of abundance, particularly in late summer and autumn, to prepare for periods when food is scarce during winter. Rather than consuming all available food immediately, squirrels bury nuts, seeds, and acorns in numerous hidden locations called caches. This strategy is known as scatter hoarding. Again, while predators are adapting and evolving to better hunt their prey, the prey are also adapting and evolving to protect themselves. This coevolution is also sometimes referred to as an evolutionary arms race. This is the struggle between co-evolving species, populations, or sexes, where each side continually develops adaptations and counter-adaptations to outcompete the other. Many prey have physical adaptations such as coloring that allows them to camouflage and hide from predators, like the walking stick insect seen here. Prey can be quick and agile to escape predators like the gazelle, and some have weapons like the spines of the hedgehog. which effectively deter predators. Other prey have chemical adaptations. They can release chemicals into the air or water that smell bad or cause harm. A skunk, for example, has a very bad smelling liquid that it releases when it's frightened or threatened. You might be familiar with the smell of a skunk, which can linger for many weeks after being released. Some prey species have behavioral adaptations. Take a school of fish, for example. They move in large groups to reduce the chance that any one individual will be captured, and then can also take on the appearance of a much larger organism that scares off potential predators. And other animals have alarm calls, like the meerkat, which can help warn other members of the group that a predator is near. We've seen many different types of adaptations that species have. These adaptations help organisms occupy their ecological niche. They affect their growth, survival, and how they obtain food. A final area of adaptations that we'll explore are the adaptations that plants have for harvesting light. Plants rely on sunlight for carrying out photosynthesis, and different plants have evolved different strategies for accessing the sunlight. Large canopy trees use all of their nutrients and resources to grow tall trunks that allow them to elevate their leaves above competitors. Lianas use other trees as support structures, allowing them to reach sunlight without building thick trunks. Other kinds of plants, known as epiphytes, grow on branches high in the canopy, where light levels are greater. Some of these epiphytes begin life on another tree and gradually grow around it, eventually strangling the host and outcompeting it for sunlight and other nutrients. Meanwhile, not all plants are trying to grow upward toward the light. Some survive just fine on the forest floor. These plants are tolerant to shade and utilize low light levels for photosynthesis. They do this by having wide, thin leaves that increase surface area to take advantage of all available light. They also can have more chlorophyll and specialized chloroplasts so they can absorb maximum light. And additional accessory pigments that are red or purple can capture light at different wavelengths. These adaptations allow many plant species to coexist by exploiting different light niches within the same forest. The idea that many species can coexist is thanks to the differences in their ecological niches. Two types of niches exist, the fundamental and the realized niche. A species' fundamental niche is the full range of environmental and social conditions under which it could potentially survive and reproduce, taking into account all the tolerance levels to abiotic and biotic factors. The key here is potentially. In this example, let's consider salamanders. Salamanders can live within a range of moisture levels and temperature. However, species rarely occupy their entire fundamental niche. There are often constraints, including the presence of other species, that mean that the organism's actual niche is much smaller. This is called the realized niche, and it is the portion of the fundamental niche that a species actually occupies in the presence of competitors, predators, and other biotic interactions. So due to competition, predation, and possibly disease, the salamander is actually only found within this range of conditions. Here we can see the potential niche, and here we see the actual niche. When two species attempt to occupy exactly the same niche and use the same limiting resource in the same way, competition occurs. There are typically one of two results. According to the competitive exclusion principle, two species cannot indefinitely occupy the same niche if they compete for the same limiting resources. The superior competitor will always drive the weaker species toward localized extinction. As a result, biodiversity at the local scale will decrease. Here we can see that two species of birds were using the same seed resource. The bluebird was a better competitor, and over time, this led to the disappearance of the green bird. Alternatively, both species may specialize and occupy narrower niches. This evolutionary process by which competing species use the environment differently to avoid direct competition, allowing them to coexist, is called niche partitioning. By dividing limited resources like food, space, and time, species minimize competitive overlap, which drives biodiversity and ecosystem stability. As seen here, two types of warblers are feeding in the same forest and competing for insects. Over time, they adapt to different resources. The yellow warbler foraging for food higher up in the tree canopy, while the black and white warbler forages on the tree trunks and lower branches. By partitioning or dividing the resources and using them in different ways, the two bird species can coexist and biodiversity is maintained. The incredible diversity of adaptations we have explored helps species occupy unique niches, reduce competition, and coexist within ecosystems.